an elasmosaur, which is like a plesiosaur, which is like the Loch Ness Monster. It was this thing that did this in the water and had a long neck and it was scary, whatever. And Cope put the skull on the wrong end of the skeleton. And Marsh was like, in public, when he was unveiling the skeleton, was like, dude, you put the fucking skull on the wrong end. And this was like, this is the actual elasmosaur as imagined by computers and some human hands. But that's this guy. So their feud went on for years, to the point where there were congressional investigations, there were hearings about their ethical transgressions and shit like that. They both basically squandered their fortunes and died alone. But their competition went to the grave. Cope, the guy with the mustache, or the guy with the smaller mustache, he actually had the University of Pennsylvania preserve his head because he wanted an autopsy at the time of his death to prove that his brain was larger than Marsh's brain.
Oh my God! Where's the head now?
It's still at UPenn. It's still there. You can go and I don't know how you might get access to it, but it's still there.
How old was he when he died?
I don't know, in his 70s or some shit.
Is it larger than the other?
They never did because Marsh did not agree to it, so they never actually compared the brains.
I want to know if his brain's bigger than Walt Disney's.
You can do that test. But so basically, this idea of heavy competition, social Darwinism, kind of informed the way people talked about dinosaurs and the way people imagined dinosaurs. Despite there was actually like the scientific literature and the scientific discoveries that went this way, and then there was the cultural kind of conversation that went that way, and in which the dinosaurs were used to enforce different ideological standpoints. For one, there was this idea of, well, I think anybody of us over 30 has read dinosaur books in the library from like the 40s, 50s, 60s that were saying something like one of the theories of why dinosaurs went extinct was because mammals came into existence and ate their eggs and caused them to be extinct. And there's again this kind of chauvinism towards mammals, and there's this kind of Darwinism, this faux Darwinism coming into play where it's like the creatures that dominate the earth have a right, that dominate the earth, have the right to dominate the earth. They have this kind of, also at this time, this was at the time of manifest destiny. This was when we were expanding west. This is at the time when we were killing Comanches and Apaches. This is the time when we were gaining dominance over other European powers. We manifested American exceptionalism. This is what really informed our ideas about dinosaurs. And so for this sort of, this kind of, people had to really put forth that, for instance, dinosaurs were reptiles. Okay, so like that was the basic assumption until even pretty recently. But then there are these stereotypes and assumptions about reptiles, that reptiles are slow, cold-blooded, stupid, and that is how we thought of dinosaurs. So this is, this is an illustration from, this is late 1800s. This is Oliver Hay. Like actually, a lot of scientists even back then were saying like, actually, it looks like dinosaurs were really diverse and agile and active creatures. That it seems to not fit specifically into like our ideas of reptiles. But there were a whole cadre of other scientists who were just like, they are reptiles. They are stupid and dumb and awful. They were terrible. And this Oliver Hay was one of these guys. So one of the things that distinguishes dinosaurs from other reptiles is that like most reptiles have a stance like this. Their legs are sprawled out like that. That's sort of what is defined as a reptile.
If they have legs.
If they have legs, right. And so a lot of people couldn't get, like, accepting that dinosaurs were reptiles, they couldn't really wrap their heads around the fact that dinosaurs didn't do this. But their whole physiology did not, I mean, I remember seeing later dinosaur books where like, if this is a Brontosaurus, which we'll get to later, but the Brontosaurus never existed. But if they were to sprawl out like this, they would leave these trenches in the ground with their torsos dragging. It just doesn't make any kind of fucking sense. If you even put their skeletons together like this, it doesn't make sense. But the way they explained it away, it was like their long necks mean that they hung out in water a lot. And so even in our lifetime, we imagine these long-necked dinosaurs living in water. They're water-bound creatures. But that also doesn't make sense. Their feet were more like elephants' feet. Their entire physiology was that of a land creature. Like their lungs would have collapsed if their torsos were actually that far under the water. But people needed to affirm their sense of what was right and wrong in nature.
Do you think part of that was just to ensnare the imagination, though, so that you can find it? I mean, that to me looks like Jurassic Park still. I mean, like something like an image that might have continued in popular culture.
I'll get to that later, but to me, this doesn't seem like this is something that was trying to spark the imagination of people. Mm-hmm. It was trying to tie people down to what they assumed about animals. There's illustrators, and I'm going to get more heavily into the illustrators, who I find more compelling than the actual scientists in a lot of ways later on. But a lot of these scientific notions that illustrators kind of facilitated really just tried to tie down stereotypes. I mean, in that era, it's just sort of like fucking like if you look at cartoons and shit like that, like people were really just trying to tie down.
Even the stereotype of the starving dinosaur on the left, that they were somehow incapable. The reason why they all died out is something was wrong. They weren't able to feed themselves.
Right, and to this day, that stereotype persists. When we say something is a dinosaur, we usually use it as a pejorative, meaning like it wasn't able to cope and it was like a outdated shit. So this is another iconic image. This is from the Crystal Palace in London. Again, this is from before Origin of the Species was published, but fossils of Iguanodon. This is supposed to be an iguanodon. But you can still see these to this very day. This is a lithograph, but they're of sculptures in the Crystal Palace in London. And these were made by Waterhouse Hawkins. Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins. This is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. These are the people who did this shit. This was the early conception of dinosaurs. This was like, they were fat, long, dead creatures that really were not, that you could not see them as being as vibrant as a mammal was, or as a hominoid was. Like this was again enforcing this idea that mammalian supremacy was right, and that anthropos supremacy was right. That just a logical, when you take Darwinian concepts in the wrong way, you wind up. This is what they did. It's just like, obviously lizards were inferior. That's why they had their chance to rule and they died out because they were fat and dumb. And now we rule the world, which we don't. But that was the concept back then. But here's a little sequence that I put together. How our concept of the iguanodon. They found only one horn and they put it on his nose. And then they wound up, this is the later version. This is what paleo artists called Iguana Man, because they still couldn't get beyond like anthropomorphizing them somewhat, and also like the only animal that people could reference that had tails and were bipedal were kangaroos. So like kangaroos really influenced our concept of dinosaurs for decades. And this is the image I grew up on. But now there's this guy who's like fucking zebra, who's like dynamic and just seems more like actually a real creature. Actually something you might see in the wild. Of course there are prejudices here and there's a lot of imagination here. But it shows that there's a different tack in which we imagine dinosaurs now. In the zeitgeist and like the cultural memes that informs how we think of dinosaurs. But back to the olden days. This was another early, this is what, I think his name was Albert Koch. This is also before the term dinosaur was coined. This is before Origin of the Species. But this guy, Albert Koch, discovered these bones and put them together like this and called it the Hydrarchos. Hydrarchos! Ruled the seas!
Water dragon.
And turns out that actually it was more of kind of like a half reptile, not dinosaur, but reptilian whale thing called the Basilosaurus. This guy, which is a more modern deviant art kind of. But just happy over here. But whatever, like this is what we think maybe this guy looks like now. And so this is the kind of shit that was still very much prevalent when I was growing up, when I was a kid, that all this imagery very much impacted my psyche. And well into my childhood in the 80s, I went to the library and I was still taking books out that were published in the 40s and 50s and 60s. This is from the 50s. This is an Edmontosaurus. This is one of my favorite illustrators, by the way. This is a guy named George Solonovich. He made hugely inaccurate illustrations of dinosaurs, but he got these fucking textures. They look like cracked clay. Like all of his images were just cracked clay. And this was his image of an Edmontosaurus, which is a hadrosaur, which is one of those duck-billed dinosaurs, right? This was his version of it, which is really one of the most like outlandish illustrations of dinosaurs probably ever made. And which is why he's one of my favorite illustrators. He really impacted my childhood, like this guy. Even when I knew that this was scientifically inaccurate, I was just like, this is fucking beautiful. And this is his happy, this is a Criosaurus, which is sort of like a Brachiosaurus. But look at how happy, look how cute he is. They gave these guys personality. He fucking made, look at him. This never happened. This never happened in the history of life. Like no dinosaur looked like that, but also no dinosaur that looked even similar to that would have done that, hung out in the water like that. Here's another one. The Brachiosaurus. Look how cute he is.
Jesse.
He's
smiling.
He's smiling. But look at how great this fucking artist is. Look at the fucking cracks in the skin. Fucking love this guy. But the first paleo illustrator that actually tried to stay true to scientific findings and actually tried to give actual life to his subjects was Charles R. Knight. And this is a really iconic, anybody who's into dinosaurs knows this image. This is called Leaping Lipsis. Right? Yeah. Lilaps. Leaping lilaps. And this he was the first illustrator that just kind of tried to show dinosaurs. And this was 1897, by the way, this illustration, which is really early because like this kind of went against the grain to which, in terms of what popular thought about dinosaurs was. He imagined them as like animals. Just like animals that we see today, like they're vibrant and dynamic and actually multifaceted and really alive. So he tried to really show dinosaurs in that light. And and he succeeded because of that. Like, people really appreciated that. Didn't change popular opinion about dinosaurs. Didn't change how dinosaurs fit into the human mythology of what's right and what's wrong, what is right in the universe. So, right after this era, this is when film began. And this is, of course, when dinosaurs started showing up in film. This is Brute Force by D.W. Griffith, which, again, enforces this Hobbesian view that primitive life was short, brutish, violent, that only civilization and only order can save us and preserve us from ourselves and from the wild, from the primitive, and from nature, really. And so this whole movie is just, people fighting dinosaurs and fighting each other. I didn't really see it, but, but then that's 1914. The Lost World comes out in 1925, which actually also starts to imagine, like, it imagines these dinosaurs as being like just fighting each other all the time. That's what they do. They fight. They fight. And that never happened because that's kind of a Brontosaurus, a Apatosaurus, Diplodocus kind of shit, and that's kind of an Allosaurus, kind of a Tyrannosaurus kind of shit. They would never have done this. This would never have happened in history, in prehistory. But it made for great stop motion animation, and like this captured, this kind of solidified what people's ideas of dinosaurs were, and they also solidified the ideas that dinosaurs were solitary animals and just fought each other along the lines of species. It seemed weird to people that dinosaurs may have been social animals, may have hung out together as a species, and may have defended each other against other species of dinosaurs. That was actually a crazy concept to a lot of people for a long time, even well into my lifetime. Because people wanted to think of dinosaurs as monsters. And that's really how dinosaurs really captured the imagination of the public. It's certainly a late Judeo-Christian idea, and going back to agriculture, it's like post-agriculture, the mythologies and the gods were there to punish humans for their transgressions against nature. And this shows up in these sorts of things, where these dinosaurs showed up not as animals, not as, even in this era, you'll see movies where they give some kind of anthropomorphism to a lion, or you look at Disney and how they gave kind of you can sympathize with other animals, but no, these were monsters. They took the place firmly as monsters in this era, where particularly because we had no physical access to them. They capture our imagination, but we have no way of going to visit dinosaurs. And so they became monsters to represent our sins. How are we doing?
10 minutes.
Okay, good. So these are monsters to punish us for our sins. This is King Kong, 1934, 1937. Sorry. This is the dominance of apes over reptiles, along with a whole slew of other problems in this movie that I'm not going to go into. Then Godzilla is here to punish our sins, science overstepping our bounds. This is the Valley of Gwangi, 1969. Cowboys fight dinosaurs. And then there's Nymphoid Barbarian and Dinosaur Hell, 1990. Trauma.
Oh, yeah.
So this is Charles R. Knight. This is the iconic Triceratops versus Tyrannosaurus Rex. This also fired our imagination about dinosaurs, about this battle to the death always that happened in the dinosaur world, but which also probably never happened, or very rarely happened. But this is what guided science, what's guided us. Tyrannosaurus people assumed were like these vicious predators, and then this theory came out that maybe tyrannosaurs were mostly scavengers. And people went fucking apeshit. People were like, no, they were fucking killers! And people really got pissed off because people really, even scientists really had it cemented in their heads that T-Rexes were vicious, like tyrant lizard king. That's what Tyrannosaurus Rex means. And people were really unwilling to relinquish that idea. Never mind the fact that most carnivorous animals are both scavengers and predators. Like, it doesn't matter. It's a moot argument. Like, fuck it. Like, the most populous, other populous species of dinosaur in the Cretaceous era when the Tyrannosaurus lived was the Hadrosaur, which is a much smaller dinosaur which had very few natural defenses. It would have been easy for him or her or it to just pick off a bunch of Hadrosaurs. Could be a predator and a scavenger at the same time. Why did it offend people so much? But people really were attached to this idea. This is Rudolph Zallinger. This is another iconic image of the T-Rex being a bastard. This is Mark Hallett. This is a Mark Hallett illustration. This is a newer one that again affirms that he was a bastard. But then the thing that changed me as a child was Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park was the first movie that presented dinosaurs as animals. That didn't present them as a boogeyman or just some sort of like alien creature. It was based on 100 years of science, and they consulted paleontologists, and they presented dinosaurs as fully fledged animals that existed in the world at some point, that had nothing to do with human beings. They had no meaning for human beings. They just existed, and they were majestic and beautiful in that way, like that whale I saw breach. Except they still need to scare kids, so that's the turkey kid who didn't believe that dinosaurs were scary. And then now we're thinking about dinosaurs had feathers, and that's a recent fossil that proves that dinosaurs. People get pissed off at that. Feathers are a theory, not a fact, and not even a good theory. What about chainsaw arms? That would be awesome. This is actually a protest against the theory that dinosaurs had feathers. This is how much it matters to some people. And this is another one. Dinosaurs is nothing. Wake up, Sheeple! Feathered dinosaurs are an Illuminati conspiracy. But it matters that much to people. People really. So even creationists who originally wanted to deny dinosaurs as like a trick of the devil, now they're putting dinosaurs in creationist museums. These are dinosaurs on Noah's Ark in the Creation Museum in Cincinnati. So not even creationists are willing to give up dinosaurs. They're saying that every reference to a behemoth or a dragon or something in the Bible is a reference to a dinosaur. That's how cool dinosaurs are. But the main argument against a feathered dinosaur is that they're not scary enough. One, why does a dinosaur need to be scary? That's my main thing. But dinosaurs can still be scary with feathers. That's a Deinonychus. I have a tattoo of its claw on my arm. This is a Tyrannosaurus going after little baby Triceratops. But it's got feathers! Does that make it any less scary at all? Look at this guy. He's fucking scary. These are These are Pachysomethings. Anyway, this is like a relative of the Triceratops, and this is imagined on DeviantArt with pre-feathers. These aren't full feathers. These are the precursors to feathers, which are these filaments, which may or may not have made dinosaurs fuzzy. But they're still badass. Look at that. So, in conclusion, there's like 3 minutes more. Okay, this is a long quote that I only wrote here so that I can read it. But this is from a blog that I stumbled upon in this research. It's a paleontologist who's married to a paleo illustrator who just blogs about dinosaurs and blogs about dinosaur art. And so basically the Jurassic Park 4 is coming out. And last year, the director tweeted, "No feathers," as if that's a selling point. And so this is what this guy, Asher Albane, which is the guy who runs the blog, you shouldn't need to know him, but he wrote this that I thought was really resonated with why I love dinosaurs and why I have such malaise in the human civilized world. But he said, Jurassic Park is revolutionary not just for its special effects, but from the way the dinosaurs were depicted as real animals. When I think of Jurassic Park, my first thought isn't necessarily of raptors in the kitchen. It's of the cocked head and curiously dainty step of the Tyrannosaur as it climbs over the rim of the enclosure. It's of a panicked flock of Gallimimus arcing over the grassy field towards the camera. It's of the closing moment of The Lost World, where we glimpse a primeval world without humans, where the carnivores don't always roar and the herbivores can go about their business. How can we watch King Kong or Godzilla or the Valley of Gwangi and hope to see anything but monstrosity, things that don't fit, symbols of what should not be? Those figures have as much to do with dinosaurs as a reanimated corpse has to do with man. The form is right, but everything else is wrong. They might as well be dragons. But Jurassic Park changed that. For moments, the dinosaurs were narratively unencumbered, allowed to exist undefined by human ideas. For a moment, we got to walk up and peer past the fence of story, of drama, of horror, and see the animal beyond. The two islands were places of terror, yes, but of wonder too. Moments of death were balanced by vistas of life. And for all the moralizing about the folly of bringing dinosaurs back, their very existence on screen gave reason enough. And that's what I love about dinosaurs, that they were real animals that we can never access, that actually were breaching whales, that were woolly mammoths, that were every other creature we fucking killed. So I'm going to close with a little series of my favorite dinosaur illustrations. This one is William Barla, another feathered Deinonychus, one of my favorites. This is an Ultrasaurus. Well, again, all the history arcs. Ultrasaurus! This guy was supposed to be like 90 million feet high and like 90 gajillion feet long. It turns out never existed. But that was a painting of it. Beautiful painting. This is I think it's called it doesn't really matter, the species names, to be perfectly honest. Because you see how much like different species of hominids change over our lifetimes. Why do we give a shit? So like Triceratops, everybody wants to ask about the Triceratops. The Triceratops, whether it existed or not. It turns out that the Triceratops that we know was a juvenile Taurosaurus or something like that, or the other way around. Doesn't mean it didn't exist, it just meant that we named it weird, and that's just our fault. But this is another sauropod, long-necked dinosaur this is Mark Hallett painting.
Greenhorns don't play with long necks.
But again, this is as a kid, I remember seeing this and being like, this isn't a real animal. This is beautiful. This has nothing to do with us. This doesn't care about us. This is just beautiful on its own terms. This is Doug Henderson, another one of my favorites. This is actually referenced in one of the Jurassic Park movies. It's a Stegosaurus in its natural environment. Just gorgeous. It's just like, these are animals in the woods. This is another one by Doug Henderson. Not a lot of women illustrating in paleo illustrating because it just seems to be a boys thing. But there are some. This is a William Stout. This is for Connor. This is a Parasaurolophus. This is a duck-billed dinosaur with a little growth on its back that they speculate is used for making sound, like sounds. It's connected to its nasal cavity. But this is like the 70s like fan art, like fantasy art dinosaur illustration, and that was indeed made in the 70s. This is the one woman that is famous for. This is Eleanor Kish. She actually this is a reprisal of that Lilaps leaping. This is her version of it. This this is her kind of homage to that. Same dinosaurs, her own take on it. But I'd like to close with a poem